DeepSeek is a technical powerhouse, but great model doesn't guarantee great business. In the rush to scale, even the giants leave massive gaps in their user journey. So let's go check it out.
So I'm over on Google and I'm just going to go ahead and give a search for DeepSeek and we'll see what comes up. Obviously we expect DeepSeek to appear top of the list, which it does, but unfortunately you can see there's a lot of Chinese here. So this is actually quite a simple fix. The SEO metadata of the website can be adjusted. You can have different content showing for different languages. Obviously at the beginning Chinese and English is probably enough for them. They can add future languages as they go on. But you can see the titles and descriptions for the different links here are showing. Sometimes this is generated from Google themselves though as well. So you can see that it is possible to have that, and that you want to go ahead and update and change this so it looks a bit more professional and a bit more appealing to users who are searching for an English website. If you do scroll down, maybe some of the search engines don't show some of these quick link actions. You can see that the second item actually is fully in English. It looks quite official. It's obviously not the official website. So, this probably pulls quite a lot of traffic in, not just for being second, but also for the fact that it's a bit more nicely formatted, and users might seek to, jump into this site feeling that, maybe this is an English version, even if it's unofficial, right? If they feel it's a bit more polished in terms of that, they might jump to and use it through this website, whatever this website offers. So let's go ahead and dive into the site itself now. So unfortunately, again, you can see that it's loaded in Chinese. Obviously, we already mentioned that you can have these settings to switch between languages very, very easily. And even for like the landing page as well, where we're coming to the official deepseek.com, it's quite trivial to have a browser check just to check the locale of the system and say, okay, this user is not Chinese. Let's show the default English. And so, users are forced to change language, which you can see is up here, which is also not directly obvious when you jump in. So some users might be intimidating when they land on this. Not everyone's going to look around for the the English language switch or something. Now most websites do that switch automatically for you. So this isn't the great experience for most users. A lot of them are probably going to hit back and go to that second link. So let's give it a shot and switch over to English. And yeah, so you can see it's basically exactly the same. And now we have the English available. If we scroll down, let's start with the footer, because there's not too much content for this landing page. Probably the first thing I'd go ahead and change is, again, if we're switching languages and we have, we're jumping into English, then you probably don't want to see some of these social media links, right? For these Chinese websites. It's not a huge deal, but, it's about localization, right? So most of your users abroad, especially if they're Westerners staying in the West, they're not really familiar with some of these apps. They probably don't want to click on these links. And even if they do, they might be a bit overwhelmed to what this is. So, keeping those sort of standard Twitter, X links and the GitHub is more than enough. And obviously a contact email or something. Similarly for this type of content, so this is the licensing that needs to show on Chinese websites to showcase you have a license to have a public accessible website. So this might be necessary if they're hosting their content inside of China. If they have servers outside of China, they wouldn't necessarily need this and they could remove that. But obviously they're following this for legal reasons. So, they might have to keep that on even for the English website. If we go through, we can see there's some common links, right? We've got like research, products, your sort of terms and conditions, and a joiner section, like pretty standard stuff. I think for the main part is that the landing page is quite bare. And if you really think about it, it doesn't really make too much sense to have it sort of designed like this, because it feels like it's adding a lot of friction to the user when they're coming to join in. So, if I'm just looking at this initially, your eyes are sort of brought here, right? DeepSeek into the unknown, and then you have this start now or access API. So the first thing is, if users are really searching for this, so, obviously I search for DeepSeek, I'm clicking DeepSeek, so I'm coming in knowing and expecting what this product is. But, if users are searching for AI models or something like that, and they land on DeepSeek, from this sort of landing page, you're not really knowing what's going on and what this application provides. It's quite easy for most people to think, oh yeah, DeepSeek, it's a chat, it's an AI model type of stuff, it's LLM, right? But, you need to also think about it from this perspective. If I've heard the name and don't know what it is, or this is the first thing I'm sort of getting into in terms of AI, you probably want a bit more in terms of introduction and sort of getting started about what this platform is and what it offers. So, for some quick ideas for that, you can see here we've got like a lot of research links. It looks like different versions of DeepSeek, different abilities it has. So, why not have a small section here showcasing that? And, you've mentioned access to API. So, you can maybe have a section there about the pricing for the API, the tokens, that type of stuff. Or, even for the chat, if chat's like completely free, you can mention a section here like, get started with DeepSeek chat. It's free to get started, what it can do, that type of stuff. So, that's a small suggestion there. So if we look at this, we have 2 clickable actions, right? And I would probably say this is already starting to add some friction, not just for the part we mentioned, there's not too much in terms of description and showcasing features, but also in terms of if I'm coming into DeepSeek to get started, adding this is just like an extra step that I need to go through. You'll find that most of the AI websites now, and even for general like SaaS products, that type of stuff, they have some type of, getting started or even like a demo on the landing page. So especially for the AI models, like if you head to ChatGPT or Claude, you'll probably dive straight into that chat box. So that could be one way to go about it. Because if you're thinking from this aspect, if I'm looking for the API, I probably already know that I want that and I'm going there. So it's not really an entry point, right? For most of your common users coming in, I'm not coming in and going, oh, they have an API. I'm going to go and use that. More so, the users coming in are going to get started, get familiar with DeepSeek, then jump over to the API. And for those users that want API, for those developers, those technical people, when they search, maybe they're searching for DeepSeek API. And I presume that that link's going to head straight over to the DeepSeek API platform or a landing page for that. So, having this as a main option is just adding to user choice and causing some delay, right? Now I have to read this and decide what I want to do. Rather, you'd want the chat box here, maybe just to get started going in, or just to have this get started CTA to click on and just get started. So you can see once I click get started, I'm heading over to the login area. That's perfectly fine. You can see there's some nice quick links to log in with Google and Apple. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. Okay, I'm into the user area and you can see that it's actually quite simple, right? There's not too much going on. There's quite a lot of empty space, which is fine. There's a how can I help you? Here, the chatbots to get started, and there's stuff on the left. So I think the big criticism is going back again to, I'm coming into the DeepSeek landing page, I'm clicking getting started, then I get to this. There's been no idea of what this product is. Again, for most people, they're going to heard of it, they probably have some idea of what it is, but if you're also trying to attract users that are new to this concept of AI and chatting with models and this type of stuff, you probably want a bit more hand-holding, a bit more introduction, a bit more of an onboarding idea. So, even for something like this, you don't necessarily have to have one of those explicit onboarding workflows, right? You're not creating a team, you're not inviting members, that type of stuff. But, how can I help you? You've probably seen a lot of these chat boxes. Doesn't matter if it's ChatGPT, Claude, any other AI website you've gone to. They generally have some prompts here to get started, to showcase like what the model's capable of and what you're doing. So, that would be probably a nice addition here to maybe have some quick action tasks here that you could just click on and it can showcase its capability. Because each step that you're adding for a user that they need to have an input, right? We already hit the landing page. We had to decide to go to English to understand where we were clicking. That's step 1, right? Then the step 2 is I need to pick between getting started and joining the API. Then I need to log in, right? You're just adding steps, and the more steps you add, you're adding a place where users can drop off. So if you expect users to come in and try the product and feel like this is great, I really want to use this product, you need to lower the amount of steps that users are taking to get there. So, when it comes to like this as well, now I have to type something else, which is also going to take time, right? I need to type it. I even need to think about what I want to do. So for me, to show you guys as well, I need to think about something that I'm going to use to showcase DeepSeek and to write about, right? So let's just ask for something simple like seeing what the weather's like today and see what type of information you can get, what follow-up it asks, because it's probably going to ask us, our location or something like that as well. What's the weather forecast today? And we'll just go ahead and submit that and see. I'm going to guess it's going to come up with some, questions about asking us where we are. Okay, so rather than asking us where we are, it's just come up with some different weather forecasts throughout the globe. Some key cities is sort of picked out. So, that's perfectly fine. I'm not going to criticize the actual model itself underneath. It's not really part of the product aspect of it, right? The actual UI UX of the platform. So, this perfectly valid answer is fine. Probably the formatting does look a little weird, that I can criticize, right? Like, you're going off into this sort of side area here, which feels a little weird. Maybe having a scroll bar or having it sort of centered, right? What's all this left space doing? Completely nothing. Why my eye is sort of going from the middle all the way to the far right? So that's a bit of a weird way to display the stuff. And I would suggest, if you're going to have this sort of overflow, put it in the center maybe, or at least have this sort of scrollable. But yeah, like, I've asked a question, right? It's come with a response. I suppose here, I mean, the attachment is sort of self-explanatory, sort of, right? Maybe for most people, they're going to see that and like, oh, I can upload something. There's not too much stuff going on here. So, maybe having an explicit text like upload something here, but, that's not a big deal. I think most users are going to recognize that and be able to interact with it. I think my criticism would be the choice of the icons here. So, we've just landed in, we've just come to the AI model, the chat box, and maybe this is our first time using models. So when I see this, what am I sort of looking at here? I have one icon that's white, one icon that's blue. For me, this feels rather separate, right? I feel like if I'm going to click on one of these, it opens up another menu. It's like a separate category of user interactions, right? So what actually happens is I click it and it turns to white, and I click it, it turns to blue. So immediately I'm drawn to the fact that these two don't look that different. So normally when you have something that's active or activated, you're not just changing the color, right? Obviously, with toggles that are green and red, it's a bit more obvious, right? Like, green is always seen as on and red as off in the the control panels, that type of stuff. But, when it comes to this, like, one's white, one's blue, I feel that color difference is more telling me that these are separate actions, separate features, rather than telling me, like, this is on or this is off. What you normally want is to have some other type of different, right? Maybe the border's slightly thicker, maybe there's a glow, maybe there's a slight, animated feeling around the border, that sort of like chasing lines around the outside type of stuff. You don't want it overly animated, don't want it to be too obvious, but at the same time, it should be obvious enough that I have an on and off state where this isn't really doing that too much, right? Maybe you could even have a cross for the icon, right? Like, search is disabled, you have like that sort of cross here, even if it's just on the icon, to sort of say like, no, this is not activated. So, that's another criticism. And then I guess here, let's read the description. Think before responding to solve reasoning problems. Yeah, I guess that's sort of a okay description. I guess it can be worded slightly better. It's not a huge deal. Because, maybe some users coming in, they don't really understand this concept of what this sort of means. I think for a lot of applications now, for users to come in, they do expect that sort of plan approach where I can ask something, and, maybe not something as simple as what's the weather, right? But for complicated tasks, I'll ask something, then it will come back with a plan for me. Then I can go to edit the plan or comment on the plan. Then it will go away and instruct to do that. So for those users that maybe are coming from other AIs, they might assume that's what that is, but this seems to be more about the reasoning, right? About the level of thinking. So for a lot of other models, that's like the low, medium, high reasoning. But like for the other part for that, that's not always necessarily shown in the UI. That's more like a API toggle, right? So I think most of the models explicitly have, like, I think for Gemini, for example, you have sort of fast thinking and the code mode or the pro mode, right? So that's a very clear distinction between what you're picking. So maybe this as more of a drop down to choose between models or to choose between modes might let it feel a bit more fluent for the users to sort of understand like what it's doing and what it's capable of doing, and how activating or deactivating or switching between these models sort of works. Because earlier I also saw on the landing page they have a lot of different models available, so you might not be able to pick or go through those sort of features or something, but that could be an option to have that sort of toggle here. So if we go back to our response message that we got here, you can see that it searched the web and that we've got 10 results and it's referenced it throughout the response. That's great. And then at the bottom, we have this 10 web pages link that we can go ahead and click on. I assume that's going to go open up and show us the links that it's used. And so we can go in and dive in a bit more. Okay, so that I would say is interesting. It's used a side panel here to showcase the URLs and the data it's going to fetch. I guess here it's used some countries that aren't necessarily English speaking, right? Like English is the main language. We can see like China's written here. So as expected, maybe there's some China references. I guess it would be nicer to have more English focus here, but I suppose that's more based on the model and its ability to find where to search and what to looking for. So I probably can't criticize that too much, but obviously if you're discussing with English, you're responding in English, it would be nice to have all the references at least maybe more accessible in English. But again, like if you're maybe searching for content that's maybe China specific and it needs to search a Chinese website to get that information, I can understand that. So that can't be penalized too much. But I suppose my biggest concern here is the use of the side panel like this. So let's go ahead and ask it again because I want to try something. I want to see if I ask another response, whether this web pages and the search results here is sort of combined together or if it has separate search panels. So let's go ahead and test that. We can go ahead and ask, let's see. Okay, there's nothing about the UK here. So actually for Europe generally, right? So let's ask it for the weather in some of the top European cities, and let's see if it adds to this search results or it comes up as like a separate entry. So I actually didn't just activate the search function, so I'll go ahead and reprompt that, but with the search, and then we can see if anything changes here. So it doesn't look like anything's really changed on the right here, but let's give it a chance to go through, and then we'll click on this web pages here. Okay, so it's opening a separate panel. So I would say I don't really like that too much. So if we go back to this general layout here, you can see that there's a lot of space in the left, a lot of space on the right. So we could really utilize that space. So, you know, looking at this isn't the problem of the model, right? Because we already have the list of the web pages. We just need a way to store this information and have this information. And you can see we already have this here. So we've already gone out of our way to categorize what's the URL that we've used and store that in our memory somewhere. So we already have a list of these records. So it will be trivial to store these records explicitly for this chat if they're not already in a usable state, and to have a sort of general search or reference panel here. Why? You know, a lot of people now are using chats like this and they can get very large, right? I found myself more and more creating new chats for topics, even if there's some overlap, because I found it very hard to go through existing content, and the search functions on most of these sites are really hard to navigate and find maybe something you mentioned or spoke about before, and you feel it's just quicker to go ahead and re-ask AI and get a new answer. And that's a sign of bad design, right? Because there shouldn't be a reason why I already have this data, but I can't find it, and I have to reprompt the AI to get that data again. You know, it also might change. It might be different from what you saw before. You know, using AI is not necessarily giving the same exact answer. For small things, it might not be a big deal, right? But for larger tasks, especially when you're researching, it can feel quite cumbersome to have to navigate and go around and finding this different data. So why I'm mentioning why am I mentioning this? Well, because there's a lot of space on our left and our right side, right? So if you're using an app like this, there's no reason why you can't have these sort of tools available to maybe clip certain parts of text, right? Maybe I really want the information about the weather in London. So I could go ahead and select this row in the table and I could clip it, or I could add it to a sort of note area here, right? Even if it's just copy and paste at the beginning rather than explicit, you know, I can directly ping content there. But, you know, having quick access, key facts, key information on this sidebar could be quite nice. and having another space here as well, maybe for attachments or files that are returned back and forth. It doesn't look like chat. It doesn't look like DeepSeek's doing the the AI image generation type of stuff, so you wouldn't need to worry about that. But in terms of files you upload, right? If you've uploaded various pieces of content and can't find it through the chat, it might be nice just to have a quick access item here for those files on storage. And then going back to the web pages, we just sort of kicked it off, right? It feels quite separate. Well, it is separate, right? Like it feels too separated to have these links. I have to scroll all the way up to the previous answer to find that website. So, you can solve that multiple ways, right? Either again, having the ability to clip or save, right? To in our little note area. This website's really great. I want to save that. Let's add it to that note section or that pin area we've created. And again, like, what's the reason that I couldn't have a list of all the URLs here? A complete list of everything that's going on, right? Of course, you can have a maximum, like only showing the last 30, 40, 50 pages, whatever. That's not a big deal, right? If you worry about storing all that data. But you already have this information here. I already can go through. It's just adding complexity for the user to have to go around and find that missing information that they're looking for. So, that'd be a nice way to sort of improve this UI here as well. If we explore some different parts of the app, I suppose there's not really too much to look at. I mean, here's a standard sidebar, right? You have your chats. You can go ahead and rename them, I guess. Yeah, pin them. It's great. So we go ahead and look at the other parts of the UI. We can see here we have the chats. We can go ahead and probably create a new one, have different ones. I guess we can go ahead and change the name. Yeah, pin, share, delete. Pretty standard stuff there. I guess it's just opens and closes the sidebar. Sure, and that's quite a nice feature. We have a new chat here, right? So rather than having to open the sidebar and click new chat, we do have that new chat option here. So in some aspects, they are thinking about that. So that's quite nice here, right? You can see that with the open sidebar, close sidebar, we do keep that new chat. So that's like that quick action is available there. So they are thinking about that pain for users when they're having to click on multiple places to get something done, right? They can just go ahead and directly create a new chat here. So that's a really nice little addition there. What else can we see? Sure, there's a quick access share icon here. We can go ahead and share stuff. That's quite nice that we can explicitly pick what's being shared as well. But maybe not too practical, I guess, because you'd have to go through and individually click and untick stuff. Might be nicer to have had a sort of select all, right? So I can select everything or unselect everything. So if I select everything, I can manually untick the ones I don't want. Or if I unselect everything, I can manually tick the ones I do want. So that might be a nice thing to have. And actually, as I say that, I can see it is at the bottom of the screen. So I guess my eyes were directly drawn towards the top here, like as I'm selecting stuff, right? Because that's what changed. It wasn't immediately obvious it's then here. So it is nice it's here, but maybe having the option here as well. Because normally when you're in a list, right, you do have the sharing item here. Because it does feel a little weird to go all the way up here to the share and then all the way back down here to share it, right? Like, why are you adding the quick access chat here, right? So users don't have to go everywhere. But like when you're sharing it, oh, I have to go all the way back down here. Like this could be a small little drop down here, right? There's no reason why it can't be a drop down here that says like cancel, create share link, and you can have the select all items here next to where I'm actually selecting stuff, right? Now I have to go back and forth, I have to click here, then I have to click down here, and that's not necessarily the easiest of interactions. Again, like it may seem rather small, but you have to think of from the user's perspective, right? If I'm doing tasks and repeatedly doing tasks, do I want to be clicking in 3 different extremes of the area, right? Like I have to go to the top right. It's literally the top right of your screen, especially if you have a larger screen that's further to go, right? You're going all the way to the bottom. Then maybe you're selecting or unselecting, right? Even if you're not directly sharing the link, then maybe you're going for the list and clicking and unclicking type of stuff. So, it's not the most polished experience for that part. But again, like having this feature is great. But once you have this, it's about how can you improve this feature, make it better, help the user flow easily through these processes of what they want to achieve, what they want to do. If If we go back to the sidebar, let's go check out the user area. Okay, so they have the download mobile app. Great, it opens the QR, so it's accessible to the user, right? Like they're going to assume they're on a PC, on a desktop. They can go ahead and scan this to open it on their phone. That's fine. I wonder if the link also. Okay, no. Like it might be nice just to have that page where it jumps to maybe a mobile app page on the DeepSeek website. I'm not sure if they actually already have one, but having a page that's like download this on the App Store or having some links, that doesn't hurt SEO, right? It really helps to have those sort of pages accessible and have people be able to search for those. Settings, help feedback, logout, sure, standard stuff. Have a quick look at settings. Okay, we can change the theme. Not a big deal, but for the theme, there's a lot of empty space in the UI, right? Like even at the bottom section where the chats are, you can have a little theme toggle there, having to jump into the settings. But again, it's not a big deal. It's maybe not something users are changing constantly, so not the biggest problem. Interesting is only the general setting. Okay, yeah, also have the language, right? So your languages and themes there. So a couple of settings to pick from. Profile, we can skip over that. For data, okay, so they've hidden away the data collection stuff. You have to explicitly go out your way to close that off. Export your data, sure. Delete all the chats. Interesting, they don't have a... Okay, they do have a delete account inside the profile, sure. Okay, so data is separate from the actual profile account itself. Sure, that's fine. Pretty standard stuff there. And so let's go over to the help and feedback section and see what's going on there. Okay, so the feedback section, okay, like maybe the UI of this, the styling could be optimized a bit more, especially for larger screens, not the biggest of deals. Login issues. Okay, so that's interesting. So the first thing you sort of come to is login issues, right? But didn't I just click this from my account? Right, I just went to my account, which I'm already logged in, and I'm clicking help and feedback. Why is the first option coming up, login issues? This is something you should link to from the homepage, right? Like I'm trying to log in, I'm on the login page, I'm clicking help and feedback, then I come to the login issues page. Because if I check the URL, because sometimes these are maybe embedded into the website, like you have to actually explicitly click them to activate them. But yeah, you can see in the URL it is changing, so there is a way to directly link to these options. It's technically possible with their existing setup. So why have logging issues as the first item is perfectly fine, right? Because that might be the flow, right? I'm having trouble logging in, I'm logged in, how do I use it? And chat, like the logical progression there is fine from top to bottom. But when you're clicking from inside the app, you want to land directly into maybe a different primary category, right? We could directly link into user guide, for example. That would make much more sense. Again, you're adding an extra click for the user. There's no reason for me as a logged in user to be looking at login issues, right? So that's just another step you're adding to users to have to go through troubleshooting. And especially if you think that if they're asking for help and feedback, they might be a little bit annoyed, they might be frustrated, they're probably having problems with something, right? So the more steps, the more barriers you're adding to these users, the more they're going to feel frustrated and annoyed. And to be honest, now with AI, why isn't a user going to ask in the chat here, right? It's not immediately obvious that there's a help or chat area anywhere, right? Even from here, like if I go ahead and click the negative, the thumbs down, right? Yeah, see, there's no link to the feedback, the help section here, right? But if we go back to the help site, there's an issue here that says chat issues. So when I'm in the chat, why is there no link to this chat issues section if you've got it, right? So the first thing for many users, they're probably going to type here. Let's just say I'm having chat issues with DeepSeek. And let's just see what it responds. Okay, so it's giving me some suggestions. Again, like I can't really maybe criticize it too much because it's maybe on the, it depends on the model, what it knows, what's available, right? It's not necessarily dynamically checking the info of DeepSeek and what the links are and stuff. So, but you need to think from the user's perspective. If your model can't do that, then you need to have some obvious way for the user to initiate or start that process, right? Maybe there's a help button here, or maybe when they click dislike, there's a help item here, right? When I'm clicking dislike, am I disliking the response? Am I disliking the overall chat? You could filter that out by having the help section link here for users to jump over to find out more information. So that will be a criticism, right? Yes, you can say that the model isn't capable of doing that. You can't train that in, maybe necessarily, based on the model's already released and available type of stuff. But you don't want to hard code those items in. That's perfectly fine. But you need to have the way for users to initiate that process to jump over, even if it's manual. Going to profile, then help and feedback maybe isn't the most intuitive. You're adding steps. User already maybe feels frustrated. Then they're not necessarily going to be thinking, where can I find the help center? Maybe sometimes things like that should be immediately obvious. So if we go over to the user guide, we can see here there's a few different items. Let's open a couple, see what happens. Okay, renaming chat titles, pinning chat. Okay, so this is a very big criticism I'm going to have of this is there's no reason for me to click an item and it go to a separate page if the content is going to be so small, right? If I'm going to a separate page, you should be providing me with screenshots, maybe more information, right? Let's see this for example. Go to the chat history on the web, click ... next to the chat. So already, this is not the most clear of instructions, right? I see click ... next to the chat. I know you mentioned chat history, but for me, as a new user, maybe this is my first chat. Is this not my chat history? I know you mean the overall chat items here, right? And here's a ... But, maybe if users are first drawn to this is my chat. This is my chat history, right? These are sort of threads, right? A collection of messages. All right, this is the actual history of my specific chat that I'm on. So, not being able to find the ... here, then going over here. Oh, right, it's here. Maybe that's even not the most intuitive or helpful set of instructions, right? Yet, with that sort of way, maybe most users are going to intuitively find it, and those that can't find it are going to feel frustrated from this type of instruction. If they're so small, why not just have this fold down, right? Fold down and open here. I'm having to click this, then click back, then click this, then click back, right? It's really bad for the user experience, and especially when the content is so small. Why? For just a few sentences, a few words even for this one, right? There's no reason I'm jumping to a separate page to have that item there, or improve the content here, or just add the ability to open and close here, right? So in terms of the actual FAQ itself, there's some key items here, I guess. Always can add and update as more issues or more common things come through. For API, because it's a bit separate, right? I see the platforms are quite separated from the chat and the API interface. It might be, adding a small description here, even if it's just a link to the AI platform, or a disclaimer this is for the AI API part, might be a small nice addition to have there. Speaking of API, it's actually very interesting that from here there's no way to enter or jump over to the API. Not saying that you have to have those system link, but the chat is supposed to be the showcase, right? This is what DeepSeek's capable of, and you can chat and investigate and feel if this is good for you, right? And maybe as a developer, I come in here and I'm like, okay, this feels the responses are pretty good, and maybe the pricing is much cheaper than other models. I'd like to use this. Where do I go for the API? Now, for most technical people, it's fine, right? I'm going to explicitly search DeepSeek API and jump over to that. But, for those users that are in the sort of middle ground, Codex, Claude Code, these type of things, this idea of vibe coding is growing more and more popular. Maybe those users aren't necessarily super technical, and so you being able to guide that user or suggest that user into the developer experience would be a nice way to add more income, some more revenue, because you can sort of see here that there's actually no way to upgrade DeepSeek. So I guess their chat is just that free entry point where you can go in and chat. If there are limits, it would have been nice to show maybe some limits here, like you only have X amount of chats per day or whatever, or like what's the progress here. But yeah, like either here in the profile menu or in the settings area, just having a ability to jump over, right? Even the about section, right? Like maybe having a developer API link to jump over to that section. Like it doesn't hurt. There's a lot of space here, right? It's not like you're going to clog things up. You know, most of these menus are pretty empty. You can add a link there quite easily. And then also adding it into here as well, right? Like if I'm a chat user going for help, looking for the API, there's no reason why you couldn't just add the link here. Like here's a platform for the API entrance. So there are a lot of suggestions and ways DeepSeek could improve the product, from the entry point through the search engine to hitting the landing pages to the actual product itself that we've gone through. So what do you think? Have you personally used DeepSeek? What's your opinion of it? Do you agree with some of the comments that are made? Do you have other suggestions or ideas that they could do to help improve the product, make it more accessible? I'd really love to hear your thoughts, so let me know.
Did you know that stagnant growth is really just a marketing failure? It's often a sign of larger, wider operational issues. Because pouring more money into that leaky bucket doesn't fix the leak, and instead you're ignoring those underlying systemic problems. Let us help you identify where your revenue is suffering and to analyze your user journey to pick out those pain points. Reach out now to book a growth strategy session, and we'll help you plan your next stages of growth and help you hit those revenue targets.